So, at the start of World War II, this agenda of dominating Central Europe, this need for living space, Lebensraum, is what Hitler and the Nazis are going to call for. And Eastern Europe is going to be under their domination very quickly in the war. And they're going to wait until the spring of 1940 to make the moves on France and Belgium and Holland and such. So what happens in the East, though, is much more horrific than what happened in the West. Much of the German control of Western Europe, there's going to be a military invasion that's going to happen very quickly, and they're going to immediately go after the Jews of this region and begin putting them under control and eventually sent to the death camps. But the local population generally conforms to German rule, and it's going to be, this talk about this great resistance in France and such, but that's quite a myth. The resistance is very small and is generally just held in the South. Cooperation, collaboration, these are the words that go along in the West. In the East, it's Hitler's desire to make this a region for Germans only. And if there's another population, it's almost going to be like a slave-like relationship to this population. So, again, he's going to look, as he invades certain territories, such as Poland, he's going to kill off the competition. And thus begins also the Holocaust. And in the beginning, as the German forces enter into Central Europe, they're going to shoot Jews quickly. As they round them up, they're going to shoot them on the outskirts of town most often, or they're going to put them in buildings as one large group and set the building afire and burn people to death this way. This is going to be seen as too slow, and eventually the final solution will emerge, where in the Polish lands, they're going to establish first concentration camps, and then later turn these into death camps, in which they will wholesale murder the Jewish population and those who are resisting in the areas through the gas chambers and then cremation. So when we look at the history of Central and Eastern Europe, we see this movement of German populations throughout Central Europe that had been native to areas like Transylvania and Hungary and such. Many of them are going to move in to Poland in the interwar years. There's going to be this promise of land and houses and such. And who are these lands and how? Where is this coming from? This is coming from the Polish population that's been pushed out, and also from local Jews. So we start to see the first migrations that are going to happen, mass migrations that are going to happen in this post-World War I history. Remember, World War I, we have these new nation states. No one's really moving, though. Now we're going to see the populations move. Germans are still, many Germans are going to move to this Polish region with the promise of riches in many ways. As the war progresses, Germany decides to make a move on Russia and take more of this territory in 1941. So the Operation Barbarossa begins, where Germany, the Nazis invade Russian-held territories, pushing them out of the Baltics in the northeast, pushing them out of much of the Ukrainian region, and heading towards the city of Stalingrad with the ultimate aim of going towards the Azerbaijan regions, where there was large oil. Now, they have allies in certain people in Central Europe, for example, the Hungarians. And the Hungarians are don't really want to be in the war. So they got their territory back, and they want everything to kind of be quiet. And Germany leadership is going to be pushing the Hungarians to send troops and send labor brigades, especially with the invasion of Russia. The Hungarians are going to send troops to Stalingrad and lose a large number of forces, and the Hungarians are going to be looking for ways to pull themselves out of this relationship while still cooperating in some respect. When the war turns against the Germans in the mid-1940s with the loss of Stalingrad in 43, early 1944, Germany again is going to push the Hungarians to do more, and the Holocaust will begin in this region really in the late 1943, 1944, whereas in Poland and Ukraine and Belarus, that region has been experiencing the Holocaust on a wide scale level. So it reaches towards the south much later, and many of the survivors of the Holocaust are going to be from Hungary and south, because those populations weren't sent to the death camps, were sent late or were saved at the very end by Germany collapsing. So World War II in this area is going to show, again, a level of barbarity that is not seen in the West. And when you look at the literature of what happens during this time period and the memoirs and the history, it is the most brutal examples of inhumanity that can be expressed. And it's going to be between neighbors at times, neighbors versus neighbors. It's going to be part of the Holocaust. It's going to be part of military actions. It is a war machine against locals with nothing to defend themselves in many ways. So it's not battle versus battle in many ways. It's the Nazi population, Nazi military coming in and doing its best to take control through fear and retribution very quickly, through brutality, and it's a horrifying chapter in human history. And Central Europe and Eastern Europe experiences this in all of its worst forms, with its own population being victims, its own populations being perpetrators, its own population being bystanders and witnesses, its own population truly devastated by what happens. And the aftermath of World War II it's going to be very comprehensible when the Russians come in and take control. You're looking at a region that has been devastated by this war, and there is no possible local resistance to this. People are looking for security, safety, and above all, food. And when World War II ends, there is mass starvation, mass homelessness, and mass migration occurring throughout the area. The Germans had removed locals for labor work into the German regions. Many people don't want to go back. There's mass migrations of Germans who first willingly went, and then there's going to be the expulsion of the Germans throughout Central and Eastern Europe. Again, one of these hidden stories, and those, again, innocent people and guilty people, and like everything else during the war, innocent and guilty. 12 million Germans will be expelled from traditional German strongholds throughout the small towns and villages throughout Central and Eastern Europe. There's going to be this retribution after the war. We have Holocaust survivors and Jews trying to regain some kind of foothold, and they turn their attention towards Palestine, and Zionism sweeps up the remaining Jews of Eastern Europe, that this is a place that they cannot remain. They were murdered and killed, and terrible things had happened. They must look as a national movement to some other place, and the promise of the British promise of Palestine becomes their focus and their hope.